Aaron Hernandez was clearly very messed up in what you can now consider to be known as a serial killer. That and more up next on the JTC channel. Thank you. Aaron Hernandez is truly hiding something big time. According to Conley, the night of the 2012 shootings unfolded when Aaron Hernandez and their associate went to the Cure Lounge of Boston. The prosecutor would not describe the encounter in depth. After they left, Hernandez followed in an SUV and pulled up alongside as they were stopped at the red light of Boston's South District. Aaron Hernandez proceeded to fire a .38 caliber revolver multiple times from the driver's side into the passenger side of the victim's car, killing Diablo and Furtado. The case remained unsolved for months, but following the Lloyd killing, Connolly stated the SUV was found in Bristol, Connecticut, where Hernandez grew up, and the gun used in the double shooting was recovered from a person with ties to Aaron Hernandez. Again, the grand jury heard testimony from more than 24 witnesses and examined how more than 80 pieces of evidence before returning these indictments needed to be combined. This was never about Aaron Hernandez. This case was about two victims who were stopped, ambushed, and senselessly gunned down on the streets they call home. Hernandez is looking forward to his day. At least that's what he claimed through his attorneys, that Hernandez was looking forward to his day in court. It is one thing to make allegations at a press conference and another to prove them in the courtroom. Diablo and Furtado were close friends who attended school and served in the military at Cape Verde. They were two young men who had come to the country to make a better life. Hernandez's cousin, Tanya Singleton, was charged with criminal contempt, given immunity in an outside plea bargain for the grand jury testimony, but basically refused to offer any testimony. Singleton's attorney, E. Peter Parker, called her prosecution aggressive and unnecessary. Aaron Hernandez was expected to be arraigned on the new charges in Suffolk Superior Court. His lawyers filed a motion to dismiss the first-degree murder indictment, saying prosecutors had not shown enough evidence. Thursday, a man described by prosecutors as Hernandez's right-hand man, Ernest Wallace, pleaded not guilty to a murder charge. So I will tell you right now, I do fully believe, based upon a lot of the evidence that's come out, that Aaron Hernandez was responsible for this other double homicide of at least 2 or 3 people, which apparently took place at a nightclub, of all places, near South Boston, it claims. And I've seen enough in the totality of evidence examined so far to say, yeah, I do believe that he committed these crimes and the murder. In other words, the double homicide in this case. I think that they made a lot of mistakes, and that allowed certain charges to not be included. But he did commit these crimes, and this is a very serious case. I'm going to be covering this for just a bit to examine these other 2 to 3 victims he actually murdered. Thank you. Aaron Hernandez fired 5 shots and later claimed to have not fired any. The prosecution's star witness for the Aaron Hernandez trial testifies that the ex-NFL star and major player fired 5 shots that killed 2 men in the shooting at the heart of the case in front of this nightclub in Boston. Alexander Bradley, a former drug dealer, a convict and friend of Hernandez, was seen with the former New England Patriot the night Daniel Diablo and Sandro Furtado were shot and killed in Boston. Bradley was granted immunity in exchange for testimony about the double homicide. In court, he detailed the events that led up to the murders, ending with Aaron Hernandez firing into Abreu and Furtado's car. As he stated and put it, Hernandez felt they had disrespected him. Judge Jeffrey Locke offered Abreu and Furtado's family members, who became emotional during their proceedings, the option to watch Bradley's testimony in a separate room. They declined. Hernandez's lawyer at the trial, however, are trying to pin the murders on Alexander Bradley, saying the shooting was the result of a botched drug deal. Bradley said he became friends with Hernandez in 2009 to sell him illegal substances. Prosecutors asked Mr. Bradley about Hernandez's behavior when the two went to the club. He acted in a demeanor like a tough guy. Bradley went ahead and told the court he did not really like people staring. He had a problem with things that most people do not have a problem with. He said Hernandez complained about people staring and trying to goad him on. Bradley said Aaron Hernandez later asked him to help him buy a gun to protect himself as a result of perceived trying incidents. He said he sold Hernandez a silver Colt revolver with a brown handle, much like the alleged murder weapon seen in a court a week ago in a separate part of the case. He was out to prove something, so he wanted this firearm, they claimed in court. On July 15, 2012, the night Abreu and Furtado were murdered, Alexander Bradley said Hernandez actually came to his house in Connecticut in a silver Toyota 4Runner. He said they smoked pot and drank a lot before going to Club Cure of Boston. He said Aaron Hernandez put the gun he had sold him inside the engine. Inside the club, Alexander Bradley cited the alleged drink spilling incident between Abreu and Hernandez again. He bumped into Hernandez and his drink splashed up and spilled everywhere. He said Hernandez was angry that Abreu did not act apologetic or respectful. They left for another bar where Alexander Bradley stated Hernandez was irritated because they believed they got followed. He claimed he thought that at most Hernandez would just intimidate them. Instead, he stated Aaron Hernandez told him to roll down the window, shouted at the men, and fired 5 direct shots. After that, Bradley said the gun began clicking, and Hernandez told Bradley to drive out of the area. So it's a very tragic part of this story, and I'm going to be showing off some of the car, the transport, that was shot up with holes, bullet holes everywhere, because it is getting very clear now, especially after certain things have been looked at, folks, that Aaron Hernandez killed all of the victims that are mentioned. And, you just, even for people who have prior had a lot of respect for NFL-related issues and so on, you just get to a certain point, and you see things like this, that all begins to disappear very quickly. And I think 100% we can agree that Hernandez should not have been there, and this should not have ever happened. Thank you. A little more here. We see that there wasn't just problems with the car or with the crime scene. The BMW itself was also caved in. I had attempted to kind of show this in part 1, but it wasn't able to really cover this important fact. Every part of the car, from the front and the side frame, windows, extraneous doors, and similar, were all completely demolished. So somebody was driving this BMW who should not have been. The Toyota 4Runner, apparently, that was also here at the crime scene, had visible burn marks and actual pieces of glass and things clearly missing. making it very clear that it was involved in the shootout. The BMW was clearly itself involved in the shootout. The license plate matched the name of Aaron Hernandez. He had committed witness intimidation. We know that now. So there was enough to get underneath that and probably bring in a search warrant for all of the different cars that Hernandez most likely owns, And they never did that. And they never went back and searched all of the surrounding property, and it was a true mess. It states it was Sandro Furtado and Daniel Diabru who had gone out dancing that night. They died right after midnight. They made no progress for weeks. And then they signed a $40 million extension for Aaron Hernandez, which of course was a mistake now looking back on it. But what's real interesting here is if you look at the actual car, BMW and so on, it makes it very clear it was used for witness intimidation. That's known as witness tampering, according to the grand jury. The witness tampering charge adds to evidence that Aaron Hernandez had growing paranoia about the drive-by shooting he was involved with, related to Daniel Abreu and Sandro Furtado. Prosecutors stated Hernandez was angry at them and caused them for causing the drink to spill at the Boston nightclub The Cure. The men were killed when the SUV pulled up alongside that car at the red light. Hernandez faces trial for their homicide as well as witness tampering. They should have just gone directly for the witness tampering charges, because pretty much they would have then rolled on Hernandez, and most likely all of the associates would have testified that he pulled the trigger, because it wasn't ever Alexander. There's a lot of people who claim to this day that it was Alexander. But no. And there was also video surveillance at the actual area outside the club showing he essentially pulled the trigger and shot those victims. And he probably did shoot the other two victims that were mentioned later. It came out after the fact. But they should have just gone straight for the witness tampering charge, obstruction of justice to be exact, because it probably would have ended a lot better for them. But folks, I'm going to say it right now. I have looked at the in-depth evidence and the exculpatory evidence as well on this a lot, and I can tell you right now, Hernandez was involved in 5 murders at minimum, because that BMW was used at the crime scene, and he was seen on video inside that car. And I guarantee it isn't just true in the Hernandez case. It's true in a number of these cases with NFL players. And it truly always has been. I mean, we just have to admit the facts at that point. I only needed to see the real, tangible evidence on the BMW itself. And when you look at the massive damage that was done to both the front and rear side doors, and also all of the windows and the abrasions around each of the windows, somebody wanted to get rid of that BMW no matter what. They wanted to be rid of this car for another reason. And one of those reasons, I'm going to guarantee it right now to you folks, is the fact it links Hernandez directly to the double homicide. It shows without question that he shot and killed Sandro Furtado and Daniel Di Abreu and someone else, because it was actually caught on camera, and it was not the person who was over in the passenger seat or in the back. It was Hernandez. So we know the evidence is there and so on. It would be good to reopen some of these cases on NFL players overall, to get certain things finally straightened out, for sure. But I can safely say that Hernandez was involved in all 5 homicides, by far. He allegedly did himself in prison, so we can't ever see the whole case anymore, be resolved. But certainly there were accomplices, and that can be dug into, and we can find out exactly how certain things were done. And I felt that this was a very important case all the way along. So I appreciate you guys just getting this out there more and more, spreading the word out there, so people really look into Aaron Hernandez. And once again, I enjoyed doing this for part 2. Thank you. Like, comment, and of course, spread the word. I appreciate it. And yes, for those wondering, after I'm done with what I need to do right now, I'm going to be doing actually another part on the Murdaugh case a little bit later, after Aaron Hernandez is kind of wrapped up, which is a very, very important issue. I'm going to be doing more on Murdaugh. Talks about the torturous tale of the Murdaughs. Prominent South Carolina family with shadowy secrets is real. The story took a fresh turn this week when investigators arrested patriarch Alex Murdaugh for allegedly hiring a hitman. This came 3 months after Murdaugh's wife and other son were gunned down. So I'm going to be covering it more because, there are some very important questions that I want answered. And it's a very serious case. And I'm partly going down to bring everybody else. They're pretty much all the rest of them are going down right now. And I want to get these questions that I have that are very, very key, important questions that I'm sure a lot of you will have as well, as far as how did Murdaugh get connected to some of these financial institutions? That's correct, because one of these financial institutions, like I mentioned with this woman also named Kristen, apparently being on the actual manifest for the financial institution, was set up totally illegally. On top of that, unlawfully. And to do it against other people who had no recollection about any of these events, particularly state nationals and so forth. And this was premeditated. Very interesting what they really say about this. The dance floor was packed when Diabru bumped into Hernandez in the club. James Patterson said he spilled a drink on Aaron Hernandez, and then Aaron Hernandez began to go off the rails. So you guys worked at a club in the area, and what happened after? We came out of the club that we worked at and got into the car directly, stated Don Gobin at the eyewitness scene. Brian Kwan then stated a silver SUV came out of nowhere and went directly through the red light without stopping. At the time, you did not recognize who it was. They did not recognize anything about who was driving. And all of a sudden, we heard gunshots. We saw 2 people in the front They were both shot. There was a lot of blood. Certainly there was more going on than that. We see here, this is the original BM